Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Boruto anime review. This one's going to be for episode 288, which is the second episode of like the return to manga content, the code arc I suppose as people call it. And this was a lot more kind of simple of an episode here, where it was mainly two large extended scenes and not too much, of a change from the manga, whereas the first episode was a little bit more like stuff was slightly moved around and reordered. So this one's a little bit more easy to talk about. I don't think, it's one of the absolute greatest parts of the manga, but it's very important stuff to get. So the first big scene focusing on the explanation of, one, who is Ada, why is she here, if she's so powerful, why was she not kind of utilized by Ishiki. How do her powers work? She has two very, very significant powers, and all building up to the kind of formation of this kind of partnership between the two of them, where they're going to help each other kind of fulfill their goals. And then on the other side of the episode, we get the kind of fight between Kawaki and Boruto to effectively decide what sort of type of training they should do, and the contrast between Kawaki actually wanting to utilize the style of training that Ishiki used on him, which is very harsh, and that is sort of like, you don't do lower level fighting like sparring, you fight full on out, and that's the best way to sort of like forge yourself into a stronger character, is in the heat of true battle. Versus the other shinobi characters want to do a little bit more training, like do the chakra stuff, do the more technical stuff, do sparring when required, but do sparring, not the kind of level that Kawaki seemed to want to go for here. So overall, like, very, very interesting stuff. The animation seemed, solid, but obviously this was not the episode for them to necessarily go like all out with it. That's for later on. So let's get into it. The more interesting, I suppose, character stuff is definitely just the introduction of Ada and what happens there. So we get revealed that she has two powers. So you get the idea of her ocular power is the power of clairvoyance, and we get a pretty detailed explanation of it here, which is that pretty much in the passage of time since she's been born, she can effectively rewatch anything that has happened anywhere, basically. This means she can also effectively kind of watch live stuff that is happening elsewhere, which she demonstrates by basically being able to watch what's happening on the other side of the episode. So kind of perfect example of her kind of powers there. So she's the perfect sort of lookout, source of at least information from the last 16 years, and so on. So that's just useful by itself, because as Bug points out, like, she's off, I think, brushing her teeth for the first time because she's been in there for who knows how long. And Bug note that, like, she's watching our conversation right now. She can keep track of that when required. So you're never sort of free from her effectively. But then her other power sort of almost like links into that with the idea of like, she's this kind of almost inescapable character, because it's this ability to effectively charm the people around her. Now, she notes it's a little bit more of a kind of curse here, in that she can't choose to kind of like turn it off and on. It just happens. And the only freedom from this, and the really only hope for her, which drives her character, is that there are a couple of rules with it. That means that, obviously, blood relatives, it doesn't work on them, because that would be weird. And then it also doesn't work on Otsutsukis. So that means, like, okay, the only chance for like a true relationship that isn't like manufactured by her power is either Kawaki or Boruto currently. Technically, it can be with other Otsutsukis, but of course she's not interested in them. So she has already decided in her head that it is Kawaki who she's interested in, because obviously code brings up that Boruto should be available as well. But she kind of just notes that, like, yeah, he's cool and all, but no, Kawaki's the one I'm kind of interested in. And And she notes that, as part of your goal code, what you want to do, you need one of the Otsutsukis as well. You need to sacrifice one of them to the Ten Tails to grow the chakra fruit. So the deal, I suppose, that they come up with here is that you give me Kawaki, meaning Boruto will be your sacrifice, and that will be our deal to accomplish our goals. Which is, the odd difference of Code has this fulfilling the Otsutsuki will. He's going to do the whole plot of the second half of like Naruto. He's going to do the chakra fruit thing to try and become an Otsutsuki, whereas Ada's goal is completely, she would like to have a relationship with Kawaki. And it's an interesting contrast for a character who has some of the more overpowered abilities within the show to have a goal that is entirely kind of like emotional and very personal in nature, and there's no ambition as such that comes from her. Now, it's interesting as well from the perspective of, why was she hidden away like this? So they explain a couple of things. One, the reason she wasn't destroyed, as was like teased in the last episode and this episode, is that she actually charmed Boro, who was the one who was meant to dispose of her. So that's how she, quote unquote, saved herself. But the whole reason that she was sent away by Ishiki is because, her powers work on effectively all of their allies as well as their enemies. And he's not particularly going to like people who can act on their own, who are technically more powerful than he is. So that's why Ada has been sealed away here. So, beyond that, you do get the sense, the interesting thing from, say, like Code, as like he comes to realize what her powers are, and he's kind of like, wait, so you're saying that like these feelings that I seem to have for you are like completely made up, like manufactured, so I don't actually like you, but I do like you, but it's all because of your powers. And there's a bit of a kind of contrast there behind like, well, how do her abilities work if, for instance, like the person actually does also truly like her, and is that even given a chance to happen? Like, how automatic is it? And there's a lot of mysteries around her power, even in the manga currently. So, there's stuff to speculate on with the nature of this power, because again, she seems to be able to control the clairvoyance and do it whenever she needs to. Just noting that perhaps the one weakness of it is that it's basically kind of almost omniscience, but she has to choose to look at it. So she can't monitor like everything. She sort of, in a way, still has to know where to focus the power so she can actually look at what's happened. She has to be told to go back to this specific date or time. She can do it then, but until she knows that she can't do it. Whereas the charming power, she doesn't, at least as far as we're aware, seem to be able to turn it off, and notes that it's kind of a bit of a curse. That this is a kind of power that she hates. She notes that she doesn't like Amado because he gave her these powers, which means that she has this plot to seek out a true relationship. So there's that. So yeah, they clink their glasses together and we get the kind of formation of this kind of odd partnership. But in the middle of this, Code also explains that basically I can't attack the village right now because, there's basically too many people there. I need to get Amado, because Amado, this is where he finds out that Amado has the limiter for his, the code to remove the limiter on his powers. So he needs to get to Amado, but attacking the Leaf Village while he's quote unquote like underpowered and is at risk from quite a few of the ninjas there potentially is a mistake. So he has Ada to know when like the correct opening is to attack, but when will that actually happen? So in a way, it's just they're watching the Leaf Village to wait for the chance to strike. And that is a lot of the dynamic that's sort of going on here. Now there is more that has to happen here at this kind of like base, which I'm guessing might be like the next episode of the one after. But again, like I think I alluded to in the last review, based on, I think, the previews and stuff like this, this is going to be a relatively like fast-paced arc that we're only like a couple of episodes away from like one of the bigger events from this kind of like earlier section of the arc. So they seem to be getting through it like pretty quickly, which I think is the right decision here. This is perhaps not the section of the manga to particularly flesh out things. This is, I think, a section of the manga that probably actually does need to be a little bit more focused down, and maybe later on flesh some things out. So that is basically everything on that side of the episode. With regards to the actual fight that we get, again, it's Kawaki not particularly liking some of the methods of training that ninjas operate on. Even though it has affected him deeply, from a practical point of view, he seems to value the power that the Ishiki training method actually gave to him. And so that's what he would like to do, and so they end up having a fight to determine which method they are actually going to use. So we get this full-on, it's kind of a sparring match, kind of not, in that they're going for it, but you don't get the sense that they're really going to kill each other right now. And there's a bit behind this, because this is a key dynamic. Boruto and Kawaki, every time they fight, is meant to be very, very notable here. And even though, again, the stakes are about something relatively low-key here, like the way to train, it's a battle of their kind of philosophies in a way at this point in time. So the battle here is sort of characterized by, I suppose, Kawaki has the maybe initial advantage because he's using his kind of like arm transformation power, the fact that he's like augmented. He's using that to his advantage, while Boruto hasn't maybe fully gotten into the fight. He's obviously initially going in with the idea he's not going to use the karma, and eventually we get into it after some of like the discussion that they have. Boruto does activate the karma, blocking the arm blast from Kawaki, absorbing it, and this pretty much gives Boruto the advantage, and he just pushes that and gets the victory. Now, interestingly, the way he gets the victory is he does the thunderclap arrow lightning style jutsu, and Kawaki tries to absorb it himself and almost forgets basically that he doesn't have the karma mark. So there, it kind of highlights in a way like, well, you need to train in more shinobi arts here, because you need to adapt your fighting style to match what powers you actually have right now. You were very much going to rely yourself there on the karma, and that's what actually lost you the fight. On Kawaki's side of things, it was interesting to see like Naruto comes to watch the fight, and that kind of inspires Kawaki, and he notes that like, I'm kind of weak as I am. There's no way I'll be able to protect Naruto if this is the way I am. And it's very much teasing the idea of, how does Kawaki now feel about the loss of the karma mark, where it was this kind of curse for him that also obviously changed his life, and in some ways, losing it is an important thing to happen to him, but in doing so, he's also lost this incredible amount of like power that would allow him to be one of the main people capable of protecting Naruto, and he doesn't have that now. And what does he do? And it's almost this idea of, he feels almost like, does he need to kind of cheat or rush his way through training to gain more power? And it's more about power than, growth as a shinobi or anything like that. And again, it's that different kind of philosophy of the characters in all of this. Like, they want to both achieve power, but for very different kind of motivations and like ideals, effectively. Beyond that, yeah, the kind of more anime original thing that happens here is that in the middle of the fight, Kawaki, what actually happens here? It's a little bit of a kind of awkward scene in that, like, it's not that like a kunai just kind of like in the middle of a fight cuts through it. It's like Kawaki drops his knife, or the knife, like he blocks it and it falls and it cuts through his headband, the metal part and the band itself. And afterwards they note that this has happened, and all the ninjas freak out about it because it's sort of a big deal, like your headband, which you worked so hard to achieve, being like destroyed like this. And they're trying to fix it at the end, but they realize that like, we're not going to be able to do this with like glue or anything like that. So the only real solution would be potentially like, he needs to get a new one, but obviously for the shinobi, they place quite a lot of importance on specific headbands. So, you know, what are we going to do here? I think if you've read the manga a little bit and know kind of what happens with some of the headband stuff, you probably have a sense for what they're going to do with it here in the anime. It seems somewhat kind of, I think, clear that that's the direction they're going to go with it. But who knows? Because on one hand, you might view this as just the anime introduced him having a headband, which wasn't in the manga. Let's just get rid of that now so we can go back to being like accurate. And maybe now we've dealt with this, we don't need to worry in animation about like always keeping an eye on Kawaki having that headband. It's gone now. So that's going to be important to see. Like, do they focus on the idea that he needs a replacement? They give him a replacement, or will it just be that's the end of Kawaki with a headband in the show? Not really sure. But yeah, that is kind of what's going on here. Next episode, obviously, it's continuing on from here. We're gonna get more kind of Code Ada and so on. It's gonna be, I think, pretty decent. So again, it's one of those things where if you are anime original watching this, I don't want to spoil it for you, so I don't want to speculate too much on the preview at this point. So pretty much just gonna leave it there. Very, very solid episode here. Especially, I think that the Code Ada stuff was like the highlight here. Just getting those explanations on what her motivation is. I know some people don't like that is the motivation of Ada, that Ada is effectively motivated entirely by like romance, and that some people don't like that. I think it works as a sort of like novel and somewhat like original kind of motivation, because there is actual true like emotion behind it, that she is frustrated about the fact that her power just automatically means she has like control over almost anyone. And you can see that is affected like her personality, in that she's somewhat demanding as a person because she expects people to just follow her. So it has kind of altered in a way like kind of who she is. And you kind of almost wonder, like, when she does encounter people who don't follow her, like, is she okay with that? And we see some of that in the manga like currently, and you see that like she is a little frustrated by it. So it's an interesting one, at least for me, and where they go exactly with it will be kind of fascinating to see. But they're my thoughts on the episode. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts are. But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.